Hey everyone, I've been wanting to make this video for a while now, but I wanted to wait until it was a little closer to Halloween before talking about this movie, and that is Subspecies V: Blood Rise. Now, I saw all of the Subspecies movies back to back a long time ago, and I really like the original. It's a very dark, very fun vampire movie from the 90s. I know it's not a popular opinion, but I actually think it's just as good as Fright Night or The Lost Boys as far as vampire movies go. I just love how gothic it is. Dark castles, foggy woods, crooked tombstones, vampires rising out of coffins, and that classical film score. It's just really old school, and it has these practical special effects. Everything about it was just perfect. I was never a big fan of the rest of the series, though. I mean, the third movie had some really cool moments, but for the most part, they all just felt like rehashes of the original. But I was really curious when I heard Full Moon Features recently came out with a fifth movie, especially when I saw that it was done by the same director, Ted Nicolau, the same guy who directed the original films, and that got me excited because I knew that he had spent decades at this point trying to make a fifth installment, but he never had the budget. Even I was convinced that this movie would never get made, but here we are, finally with Subspecies V. And what are my thoughts on it? Well, look, it's not a bad movie. There are a lot of things that I like about it, but there are also a lot of things that I don't like. I will admit, I do think this is one of the better movies that Full Moon Features has produced in the last 10 years. You can tell they were very passionate about making this. But at the same time, there are just so many things wrong with this movie. I do want to start by focusing on the things that I enjoy though. For starters, I appreciate the fact that they brought back Anders Hove to reprise his role as the evil vampire Radu. However, unlike the previous movies, Subspecies V is a prequel to the original instead of a continuation, which I'm sort of mixed on. Some of you know that I do not like prequels very much, but the more I think about it, I'm not sure what else they could have done to continue this series. I mean, the fourth movie pretty much ended the story. So instead, this prequel shows us the origin of how Radu became such a powerful, deranged vampire. The story is set during the Dark Ages when Radu is a holy knight, believing himself to be human, but he soon discovers that he was actually born a vampire, was stolen from his parentage, and was led to believe he was a human. There's this one scene that's pretty morbid, and it's in the trailer, so it's not like a spoiler, but the scene I'm talking about shows Radu as a baby getting his claws and ear tips cut off, and I'll admit I actually winced when it happened. It's a very effective scene, and it does also set up an interesting backstory for why Radu hates mankind. Just like the original film, this one also has a lot of great locations. The vampire's lair looks like it came straight out of an old Christopher Lee Dracula film. There's all these dark underground dungeons and castle ruins. They picked a perfect setting for the movie. The whole thing starts off pretty good when they're setting up Radu's backstory, but after that is when the plot starts to lose its direction. They spend a good amount of time setting up all of these different plot elements, and none of them ever go anywhere. Characters will disappear and reappear throughout the film, almost as if the scriptwriter completely forgot about them, and there's even some characters that just come out of nowhere without any introduction. It's like the director had an interesting concept, but he didn't know where to take things after that. The entire second act just feels like repetitive scenes of nameless extras getting their necks bitten. The whole thing got really tiring after a while, and the final confrontation was especially anticlimactic. I don't know, I just think the last couple of death scenes should have just been one epic fight scene. The original Subspecies had a vampire sword fight. This, on the other hand, is just random death scenes. I also think Radu's backstory should have been more spread out throughout the film, rather than just being condensed down into the first 30 minutes. Like, maybe they should have spent more time on his parentage or his connection to the Holy Knights. Instead, the movie just sort of rushes through all of that. And I understand that they do not have the biggest budget for the movie. But something that I did like was the cinematography. It looks a lot more professional than a lot of Full Moon's other productions. It's shot in this beautiful ultra widescreen ratio. It almost looks like a big Hollywood film. So I do appreciate the effort that they went into for this. But at the same time, this also creates a problem, because the professional cinematography makes the flaws of the movie stand out even more. What I'm talking about is the editing. Unfortunately, the movie is very poorly edited. The worst part about it is when the vampires move fast. The vampires have super speed in this film, and whenever they start moving real fast, the footage is all sped up and it looks really lousy. I mean, if this movie looked like any other low-budget full moon feature, then the lousy editing would not stand out as much because you expect it to look cheap. But instead, the high production value only makes the movie's flaws all the more noticeable. It's like imagine if Game of Thrones was edited like an episode of Power Rangers. That is exactly what this movie looks like, and it just takes you out of the whole experience. Like I said, this movie is not terrible, but the flaws just kept getting in the way of the good stuff. Compared to other vampire movies nowadays, Subspecies V is actually pretty original. Just like the first film, vampires have the power to transform into living shadows instead of turning into bats or wolves like most vampire movies. But unfortunately, the shadow effects are much faker than they were in the original. They also established that vampires are not capable of making music because they don't have souls, and apparently you can't make music if you got no soul. I know it's cheesy, but I still do commend the filmmakers for trying to be creative with vampire lore. Something that I wish they had brought back from the first movie is Radu's clay minions. If you don't know what I'm talking about, in the other Subspecies movies, Radu has these little stop-motion minions that do his evil bidding, and it was real disappointing to me that they did not bring them back for this. I understand Full Moon doesn't do as much stop-motion as they used to, but they still do lots of other puppet work in their movies. I just feel like they could have done something to bring them back. One of the movie's highlights, though, was the vampire makeup effects. It's about on par with the original, I would say. You have amazing prosthetic work, but you also have subtlety with dark circles around the character's eyes, which works just as well. The acting might not be fantastic, but it's really not that bad either. It is better than your typical straight-to-video B-movie acting. It's not like they're just phoning it in. You can tell that they really do care about their performances, and that is a really important factor. In the end, this film had a lot of potential, and it probably could have been much better if they had put more time and money into it. Honestly, this could have been one of the best movies Full Moon ever made if they had done that. But still, I do have to commend them for finally making this movie. It might not seem like it, but it really is an achievement for Full Moon and the director Ted Nicolau. Unfortunately, when I look at the film objectively, the highest rating I can give it is a 5.5 out of 10. Trust me, I wanted to give it higher. It's not an awful movie, but I can only recommend it to people who are fans of the original Subspecies like myself. Something that I should mention before ending this off is that I originally did not plan on watching this. Full Moon Features might be a B-movie studio, but I do love a lot of their older films like Puppet Master and From Beyond. I even like some of their later films like Ginger Dead Man and Evil Bong. As cheesy as they are, they're fun to laugh at. But I think a lot of their movies over the recent years have been really forgettable. You know what I think it is? I think Full Moon sort of got mixed up in that whole asylum shtick where they make bad movies on purpose because it's easier than trying to make good movies, but I have to admit, after watching Subspecies V, Full Moon has actually proven that they can still make good movies, at least when they want to. Thank you for watching, have a happy Halloween.